meeting hundreds of MS Bike participants and hearing inspirational stories, including ones about their own epic bike rides. He even made a few friends along the way. Jonathan has completed 17 additional MS Bike tours, and in the process has raised over $250,000 for MS Canada. In 2013, Jonathan was diagnosed with MS, but he has not changed his life's plans. An active, healthy, and purposeful life included riding his bike, an activity he could do with friends and also giving him a ton of energy, an immense joy. Jonathan has not been alone to take on life's challenges. Family, friends, and an amazing community of people have supported him throughout. Today, Jonathan comes after a cross-Canada ride that began in Kitsilano, BC, and on June 26th, he reached St. John's, Newfoundland. Jonathan is an inspiration to the whole of the MS community. Jonathan, we thank you for your commitment, and we are fortunate to have your support. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a very warm welcome to MS Bike spokesperson and ambassador, Jonathan Allinger.
That was a purposeful mic drop.
You're tired from the bike ride.
That's true. Which bike ride? I don't know. So for those of you who don't recognize this little person, you may have seen him at lunch, serving you a burger or a hot dog or something. This is my son, Leo. So he's joining me on stage because he is the most important reason why I'm here and doing all of this. So I wanted him to be here with me. So can we just start by thanking, I know we already did all the thank yous, the sponsors, MS Canada, the volunteers, but can we just stand up again and do one more thank you for the people that make this happen, the reason why we're here today. So, sponsors, MS Canada, and all of our volunteers, please. Thank you. Someone over here's had a lot to drink. So I'd like to thank MS Canada as well for inviting me to speak here in front of you all tonight. It's an honor, really, to be able to do this, share a few details of my journey, and hopefully inspire a few others to take similar steps. So thank you, MS Canada. Everyone that's here today, all of the energy that we have, you guys are what makes this special. The participants, the volunteers, and I'm just again very grateful for everything that you guys do. Thank you for coming together. So glad to be back in person. What a difference! 2 years virtual. I mean, we survived, but just barely. So I, for one, am very glad to be back in person. Having just completed a life-changing journey. Sorry? So having just completed a life-changing journey of riding my bicycle across Canada earlier this year, I'd like to give you the short version of how that came to be. And you got some details from Hank the Tank over there. Frank the Tank. I tried. My word association's not working so well tonight. So in 2013, he already gave you the details. I was diagnosed with MS, and some of my friends, including Daryl and Amanda, who are sitting right back there, if you want to put your hands up. So these two, along with a few others, decided to, in solidarity to my cause, join their very first MS bike event. That was in 2013. I was a little bit busy at the time, but they took it upon themselves and started fundraising and riding even before I did. So thank you. That year I made a promise to them. I said, next year I will join you on the journey to end MS. And so that's when my journey started with MS Bike. It was in 2014, the very next year, 10 years ago. So this is my 10th year. Happy to be here. A quick shout out as well to all of those first timers. Wow. It was the first MS Bike event that I've been at where I've seen so many people stand up when asked about first timers. That is great to see. Yeah, so I started riding, and you know, it was in Cornwall at the time. It was at the NAV Center. We were having an event like this, and I just knew right away that this was my community, and I was hooked. At the time, I had only recently taken up cycling as a hobby, but it soon became a passion of mine, and that was all about the ability to stay active and keep my symptoms at bay. Over the years, I've been blessed with the opportunity to meet more and more avid cyclists and MS Bike top fundraisers. So kudos to Mark, Fern, and Matt, and everyone else who's just made outstanding contributions to the community over the years. That you guys have inspired me. Thank you. I've had the opportunity, thanks to MS Canada, and some of the rewards that we get to go to events like Dinner of Champions, Tour of Champions. I've got my friend Scott back there, Scott Davis from Waterloo. I met in at one of the Tour of Champion rides. Mark Baserman, I know I met you many times in Ottawa, and actually Mark was one of the people that inspired me to think about doing a cross Canada ride one year, because he's done it a few times himself. So this community here is what really inspired me to do this trip. With almost I think 150,000 raised from this past year's cross Canada trip, including all the funds raised by my friends and teammates over the years, we've raised almost $300,000. So congratulations. And this event 10 years ago was the catalyst for this journey. So let me just try to be brief and answer the top 3 questions in terms of most frequently asked having come back from this cross-Canada journey. And it's quite apropos that Leo's up here for the first one, because it's kind of an inside joke. I mean, you have to realize that I don't normally look like this, or I haven't normally looked like this in the past, and I'm specifically speaking about my beard. So for the people that actually still recognize me, their first question is usually, when are you getting rid of it?
Now, right now, please.
The next most popular question is really a 2-pronged one. It's, how do you feel? And there's so much baked into that, right? How do you feel? On the one hand, crossing the country, you know, the physical and emotional perspective, what can I say? So starting this past May 7th, over the course of 51 days, 280 hours on the saddle, 7,000 kilometers, 40,000 meters of climbing. You might be surprised to hear that it wasn't the physicality that was the most challenging part. The mental piece. Absolutely. The mental piece was the biggest challenge. I was determined, hell or high water, that I was going to ride every single kilometer. I recall my uncle mentioning at one point, actually, and he's in project management, and he said, "You know, Jonathan, no one's auditing you. You want to skip a few kilometers, get on the motor home," and I said, "No, I'm doing every kilometer." So the challenge was mental, and it came from the desire to push forward really at what I would say are all costs, in spite of the obstacles that we face as a team. And there were costs, and they were significant, but we made the journey, and we're here, and we raised a boatload of money. We raised a ton of awareness, so that part makes it all worth it. In terms of impact, I can unequivocally say that the journey's changed my perspective on life. And while I am not an astronaut returning from space, I find the analogy strikingly meaningful. Having seen the potential to meet such an ambitious challenge in spite of my limitations, I've definitely come back home asking myself, what more can I do?
Take off the beer.
My own fault.
Better grab a clipper, Leo. I'll go find a clipper for you.
So what's next? That's kind of the next question, right? It's really, really challenging to answer that question. But we do have a documentary coming out, and hopefully shortly. I got a draft version today while I was riding my bike. I did not watch it. It's an hour and 30 minutes long. So it'll be like a movie. And anyways, look for that in the near future. That's coming out. I'd love to do a book. There's lots of additional stories and photos that won't have made it into that documentary. We'll see. When we find the time, we'll figure it out. I'd like to leave this group here with three messages, if you will. Maybe Leo wants to add one or two more. I don't know. So, the most memorable part of my cross Canada journey was not the scenery. So Canada's a super beautiful country. There were so many parts that I could talk about, but it was not the scenery. It was the people I met along the way. So whether it was Derek in Vancouver, who actually met us at a gas station 20 kilometers into the journey, very first person who rode with me on Journey with Jonathan, or there was Mr. Anderson, who I just found out today. I thought he was the oldest person I've ever ridden with, but I spoke with Fern earlier, and it turns out that he beat him by 1 month. Sorry, Fern. Yeah, Mr. Anderson was one of many stalkers along this journey. As some of you know, I was publishing any and all data available online for all to see. Ironically, the people who seemed to not always know where I was were not the people at the other side of the world. They were actually the people on my RV. I can't answer that one. So Derek in Vancouver, very first person to ride with Journey with Jonathan. Mr. Anderson, one of the many stalkers in Banff, showed up at 6:15 in Banff and said, "Hey, are you ready to go to Calgary?" I said, hang on, Bruce. Everyone's still sleeping. I was actually typing up my last blog on the website, a note to my mom, and I finished it a couple of hours later when I had asked him to come back. I hurriedly finished it so that he could ride with me to Canmore, and I couldn't keep up with this guy. So kudos to people who are continuing to ride as a way to stay healthy. I think that's fantastic. Oh yes, Jack. There was Jack at the A1 Pizza Stop in Wolseley, Saskatchewan. He actually invited, when he heard that we were staying at this campsite not too far away, he knew the person who owned it, and he said, I wouldn't go there. Why don't you instead come to our ranch? We kind of looked at each other and he said, all right. And it was the most beautiful place. He had horses. He took us in and we had tea and coffee and he promised us pie. Actually, he didn't have pie. But he took us around his property. Sorry?
Yeah, because it all went in your beard.
I didn't have this big of a beard back then. Took us around his property. A friend of his came over who was actually the deputy mayor of Wolseley, Saskatchewan. We had a tour. It was these types of memories that are just going to last a lifetime. So I had friends, Scott and others who are not here today, who joined in Tobermory. I had friends who joined in Moose Jaw and rode all the way to Wolseley. So just the friends that joined along the way, these are the memories that stick with me. I promise I'm getting to the end. So if you're asking yourself how I was able to ride my bicycle across Canada, for me, I would say it was a sense of urgency. And I don't want to get into the whole rigmarole of my story and how I became urgently concerned about doing it now. But the important thing to know is that there was enough urgency that it overrode, my typical question of where am I going to find the time, right? I think a lot of us ask that question often, right? Where am I going to find the time? I could do this, I could do that, but where am I going to find the time? And for me, it was a sense of urgency, having MS and not knowing if this is something I could do later. So my question to you guys is, what would it take for you
To take off the beard.
to live your dream, right? So ask yourself that question, write it down, and act on it now. Life's too short. So lastly, the trip would not have been possible or as big of a success if I had embarked on it myself. I leveraged relationships that I built and nourished over the years to make this dream come true. So I am so grateful that you guys are all here today. I would urge you to continue to use this opportunity to connect with people, make new friends, or grow your existing relationships. You never know when you might have to call on them. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you, Jonathan. Don't run off just yet, you and Leo. We have something very special for you to honor you for your dedication and enthusiasm, your cross-country journey on behalf of MS Canada. Thank you for all that you do and all that you continue to do to inspire all of us. It's always an area sometimes.
Pictures. Before I let Jonathan and Leo go, there is another group here today that if they maybe didn't ride across Canada, but they rode today and they also have MS. I would really, really like to invite those riders that are here today who rode and have MS. Would you please come up and join Jonathan and we can get a picture. Thank you to all of you.